Good morning. We have met the compliance with the Open Meeting Act for the filing of the meeting notice and posting of the agenda as required. I call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Chairman Conway.
Here.
Vice Chairman Potter.
Here.
Secretary Amos.
Here.
Commissioner Putnam.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Commissioner Ray.
Here.
Commissioner Ritz.
Here.
Very good. All are present today. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is the approval of the meeting of the minutes for the Oklahoma Aeronautics meeting in May 10th. I entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Potter.
Aye.
Secretary Amos.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ray.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Conway.
Aye. Thank you very much. They are approved. Item 4 is the director's report. Director Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome all and welcome our audience. It's great to see you all. Glad to see everybody's interested in aviation and aerospace. You should be. And airports. It's a good thing. Two things in my director's report quick. The Ada terminal, we had kind of a pre-open house. I met Congressman Cole down there. I would encourage all of you, if you get a chance, particularly our 4th District Commissioner, and to go down and see their new terminal. It's beautiful. It's a great front door gateway to the Ada community. I mean, it's very clear that this is where business is coming into the Ada airport. So it's a really, really impressive building, and we participated in that, helped them along with they put much more in it than we did, but we did do a $500,000 grant for the Ada terminal. Bristow groundbreaking was a really gala event. Senator Inhofe was there. I emceed it. He was, of course, very helpful to us in getting the urging and the FAA to help us along and get a grant. And I always look at you, I just have to. It's just such a habit. But we did do very well in getting a discretionary grant at the end of federal FY16. I think even some might say we were moved ahead of a certain commercial airport in Arkansas, which will remain unnamed, but that helped us to make that possible. We're totally rebuilding building a new runway in Bristow. Got several aviation companies on the airport there, most notably Consolidated Turbine, which does work on CFM56 engines, a big, you all know that better than me. But Vertical Aerospace, which is very just down the road, overseen and led by Trey Siegfried, a name I know a lot of you know. They're a MRO work. They do MRO work on commercial as well as military and general and business aviation. They will also utilize the airport and the new runway. So that was a great event, and I think Senator Inhofe, he liked flying in and then kind of buzzing everybody down on the runway when he left town. So it was very good. Probably about 80 to 100 people, covered by all the Tulsa television stations and media from Tulsa. That would conclude my report. Kept it short. Now that pleases Commissioner Amos. There's more to come.
All right. Well, you're still up for item number 5, legislative, congressional, and regulatory update.
Yeah, and
Director
let me do one thing. So
Real
skip
quick, Mr. Director, how many terminals have we built?
5 or 6.
We were
That
6 going on 7 with the
Yeah,
Ada.
participated in, and those are, help me here, Ada, Durant,
Durant,
Muskogee.
Grove, Shawnee, and Goldsby.
Goldsby, a little smaller scale, but we were recently down, so we, that's one of our people still in the community tend to think of the airport as, so it's a great community outreach thing. Let me do one thing, 4.5. Want to introduce our newest employee. I think I'm the one person on staff who can actually say her name correctly. But Moen Yusuf, did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Moen comes to us from OU Aviation Management. She's in, and I think we have with us today several other interns for airports. Would all of you please stand and just take a bow? So I think OU, OSU's represented. Any Southeastern? We have one commissioner who's kind of partial to Southeastern. Okay, all right.
Well, welcome.
So all good news, getting more young people in aviation and aerospace. I'm gonna handle these together, just in a sense, state legislation, because I talked a lot about this at our last commission meeting. This is gonna be much briefer. At that point in time, two things were not finished, so I couldn't talk to you about them. The first one, as several of you know, we've worked for several years and really talked about it for double-digit years about the issue, which really has to do with aircraft excise tax fairness and all the many exemptions to the requirement to pay an aircraft excise tax, which there are 18, more than any other state. But notably, the one that if you get your aircraft put on a charter ticket, a Part 135 certificate holder, you're exempt from paying your aircraft excise tax. But the really thing that stuck out about that or was significant, unlike any other state that provides that exemption. 26 states do, we being one of the 26, the other 24 do not. We didn't require that aircraft ever actually be used for a single charter operation. All the other states, 50% of the operations. In Kentucky, it's exclusive. So we've been advocating for that for the last several years. It's just not right. Not when companies like Devon and Quick Trip, they're paying their aircraft excise tax. They want a good system. They don't look for a way to circumvent. We finally got that passed last session. So we have now joined the other states. 50% of the operations must be charter. We're kind of working with the tax commission right now. How's that going to be implemented and enforced? We've talked to several other states about that, so we don't have to necessarily make a new wheel in that regard. But it is in effect right now, was effective July the 1st. So the tax commission today could be enforcing that. But we're assisting them in trying to come up with an efficient and competent way to enforce that new provision. Any questions about that?
Just have one question. So this is going to be, if a charter comes in and they fall below 50%, then they'll have to pay the excise tax. Is that correct, or will it be prorated?
That's one of the things to be worked out.
Okay.
From past history, when someone comes off a charter ticket, what I've seen is they actually say, you owe us now what the fair market value, when you originally brought it into service or you acquired it. So that I think will give some guidance. And obviously, this is going to be a little bit like, the highway patrol does not catch every speeder. They catch enough, and it's a deterrent that, wow, my ticket was $274. I'm not going to speed anymore. And if you get one in the city of Oklahoma City, it can be worse. But that's what we're probably looking at, that you're not going to get everybody, but you're going to get certainly some from whatever they'll look at. Logs, books, various things to confirm, is this actually indeed not just talking like a duck, but walking like a duck, that it is a aircraft being used for charter operations.
So the commission won't have any active role in monitoring that?
We will not. Our enforcer of our collection of aircraft excise tax and registration fees is the tax commission. Now, that's one of the, I won't get into this, but could a role develop? That's possible. We'll have to see, but statutorily, it has the responsibility, as it is in most other states.
Great. Any other questions on that topic?
Now, the reason charter is excluded is because they're the group that yelled the loudest?
Commissioner, I wish I had the background on that. When I came to the position, that exemption was there.
Excluded on other states?
Total of 26. So 24 states do not provide such an exemption. And ours is kind of, interestingly enough, it's in a sense backed into. The exemption is for commercial airlines. We would love it if commercial airlines would base their aircraft here and buy fuel and blah, 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 blah. That's right. But charter got,
Exemption there for years and
yeah,
they haven't.
yeah, charter got not snuck, I don't know how it happened again, but charter was included in the definition in our statutes of commercial airline. So that's how they also garnered the benefit of being exempt. The exemption is actually for a commercial airline, but I don't know. But let's say it was prior to 2002, certainly. Those exemptions have come on through the years. There was one, the 18th exemption was added probably 6, 7 years ago. Fortunately, it had a sunset on it because what the exemption was for never actually materialized. Had to do with rotor wing aircraft and military, and never materialized. So we never were impacted by that. And we do try to guard now further exemptions. Let's really think about this. But you know, you'll get legislators with ideas in the name of economic development. But you know, it directly impacts us because that's our largest source of revenue. It's 92% of our revenues.
Thank you.
The other bill I'd like to talk to you about, and I had the ACES bill, what was popularly known as the ACES bill, the ACES legislation. And what this basically does, I'm going to keep it very simple and short. You're very familiar with our CADSCU program. You're familiar with our OAI. Some of you are, the OAI program. Both of those things were transferred to Aeronautics in 2008 by the legislature from OCAST. And we did run both programs for a number of years. OAI for a shorter duration, about 3 or 4 years, the Oklahoma Aerospace Institute. We did that in partnership with OU and OSU until money problems came up because of budget issues. And we ran CADSCU until through FY17. And the commission voted toward the end of FY17, we're not going to do this anymore. We've never gotten appropriated dollars as we were promised. This is not our core responsibility. So it's really both those concepts put in a bill, transferred over to Commerce, but also Commerce got an appropriation to actually try to fund those programs of $446,000. So that had an emergency, well, the money had an emergency effective of July 1st, so the money is available for Commerce to start getting that ready to become live on November the 1st. A lot of details haven't come out. They are to work with us in partnership, and we have been. I think probably Commerce, unlike us, due to a limitation of money, we did it by contract. We contracted with a vendor in the private sector to run the CADSCU part. That is not how we did the OAI part when it was operational. But I think Commerce is looking very seriously at doing it internally and hiring staff to do it. Of course, what they'll have to do is they've got an appropriation right now for FY19. But I think it appears right now that Commerce may focus a little bit more on the OAI part, which is to, in a sense, convene a forum of aerospace and aviation industry stakeholders, private sector, government, education, to focus upon the challenges facing the aerospace industry that need to be addressed to ensure its viability and growth. That's what it looks like they're going to focus more on that than the CADSCU part, which was to help small businesses that want to do business with DOD or Boeing or Northrop or Lockheed. But I think they're going to focus on that. I just don't think that's going to be its primary focus. That's what I know about it right now. And those are the two pieces of state legislation. Any questions about those?
What about all the assets or intellectual property that was in CADSCU, the databases and all that stuff? Did that flow over and those other guys can keep that?
That was most of that came back to us because it was paid for by us. And I haven't yet, but would certainly provide those to Commerce, that information.
Thank you.
Federal, on the FAA bill, the congressional level, I think there is a House FAA bill that is do my math real quick, which is counting, which is a 5-year bill. It's funded at the level it is right now, $3.35 billion, the Airport Improvement Program. but it will do something, rather, there was an effort to add to that. But most of you will recall on the House bill, that was overseen and steered by Chairman Schuster. And Chairman Schuster was very driven about one particular issue for the time we've been debating this, which has been about 2 years, maybe even longer. ATC privatization, air traffic control privatization. That, of course, finally was, no, not once again brought up, once again goes back to the grave, but no question, it has many lives. It will most likely come up again, and I have to look over at Commissioner Ritz because she's lived through several of them. So there'll be another iteration, no doubt, but at least not right now. Not in this FAA reauthorization, so it'll be a while before we have to deal with that again. But it has AIP at $3.35 billion per year. There is a provision, though, that there'll be supplemental funding starting in FY19 at around $1 billion to AIP, and that'll go up each year to FY23, where that'll be $1.11 billion. Now, the Senate bill, that's passed, that's done. It's waiting on action by the Senate and Senator Thune. And Senator Thune, yesterday, an oft-used description, I think they just must like this because they are a little slow about things in Washington, that he has stated that the Senate can walk and chew gum at the same time. And even though they've got now a Supreme Court nominee that they've got to consider, and of course that's at the top of the list, and they've got waterways issues and so forth, it is his intent to get the FAA bill on the Senate floor, hopefully this month. That's his intention. And then if that happened, then they could get a bill done, and it is of course a little bit different. Their bill already has an AIP of it'll start off at actually the same amount, but it will go up $1 billion each year to finally about a little over $4 billion at the end of its duration, which it's a 4-year bill. It's a 4-year bill. One of the problems in the Senate bill, not quite as large as the ATC privatization, but has been the 1,500-hour rule that affects the pilot issue and the shortage of pilots. He has wanted to mitigate that a bit through a variety of measures, perhaps more simulator time, things like this, not necessarily lower the actual amount, but somehow make it a little bit simpler and expedient to reach that level. That ran into a real buzzsaw from the New York delegation. Didn't matter, bipartisan from the New York delegation, because that's where the Colgan aircraft crash happened that led to the 1,500-hour rule. I don't know if he's going to insist that be included. They may try to deal with that separately, or may try to deal with that just through the FAA and administrative processes. But it's his intention to get the bill on the floor, get it heard, get it passed, gets it to conference, so that hopefully we could get an FAA bill before the current extension expires on September 30, to get that done, because that's through the fiscal year. If you don't get it done, midterms, we're into a new Congress, and literally it starts over. Who knows? Does that bring back up ATC privatization? I don't know. But I know it would be to all our advantage if we got a bill done this year, passed by the Senate, conference, get it on the president's desk, and get it signed. NPE reform, Senator Inhofe taking certainly a big focus on that, called the Flight Act, which I have talked to you all about. That's in the Senate bill, not in the House bill. Representative Graves from Missouri, General Aviation champion, tried to put something in the House bill, but that was unsuccessful. So, but NPE reform is still in the Senate bill, and hopefully at the end of that process there'll be some shape of NPE reform. Just an interesting little footnote on all this, Judge Kavanaugh, which, as you know, probably that's President Trump's Supreme Court nominee for the court, for the the highest court. Well, there's a higher court, I suppose, but the highest man court. He was the judge who authored the opinion, authored the opinion that said, no, the FAA couldn't force hobbyist modelist UAS operators into their rules and regulations. He said if Congress wants to do that, then that's their idea, and if they don't want to do that, that's their idea. But in the FAA reform, the FAA Modernization Act reauthorization of 2012, it exempted the hobbyists and the modelers from the FAA rules. And he wrote the opinion saying, that's what it says and that's what it means. So, any questions about the federal legislation?
No questions.
Okay.
Looks like we're up to item 6, that you want approval to fill a
Item
vacant
6?
position.
Yes, that's preceded by an announcement that our long-serving, notice I didn't say long anguishing there, Rhonda, but Assistant Operations Officer, she's leaving us. She is moving to, I don't know why really, I think a daughter's probably a good idea, to Abilene, Texas. So the only thing I could tell her about that is that's where Jack Mildren played football. So she's gonna be leaving us at the end of this month, which necessitates us filling that. We need to fill that vacancy. So I need your approval to fill the vacancy.
Okay, need a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion to approve? And a second? Motion, second. Any further questions? Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conley.
Aye. Motion passes.
Well, now that you really see the writings on the wall, Rhonda, would you like to say anything?
Well, I've enjoyed very much my time at Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. A lot of fine people there, met a lot of fine people in my time there. I've been missing a lot, but things change, life changes, and mine is definitely in the process of change, so I've been missing you all.
Well, we'll miss you. We wish you the best.
Rhonda, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 7, you're still there, Victor.
This is, the commission has, back in 2003, as under your statutory authority and responsibilities, you can delegate any of your responsibilities to the director. I've been very, very reluctant to ever seek that. Where it has been efficient and necessary for us is in the area of our ability to enter into an agreement. So the current statement of that is if it's up to 50,000, I have the authority to do that. If it's over 50,000, and that is compatible with the state procurement laws. If it's over 50,000, it must be an emergency, as that is defined in the Open Meeting Act. So loss of life, loss of public funds, some other disaster of that nature. Is this in their packet, the current statement? Okay, the current statement's in your packet. What I always really, I wanted, because I probably bring, as you all well know, I bring perhaps in some of your mind too much to you, and then in some of your mind, I'm sure not enough. But I like you to be informed. In doing this, I recommended that when and if I would do this, and it's still got to be a very, in a sense, urgent, or that might be the wrong kind of word, but an exceptional situation, the wrong word, an exceptional situation before I would do this, and then I report it to you. But it was to be done if a situation presented itself tomorrow about some airport, maybe there'd been a tornado or something else, or heavy rains, and it caused something, I would consult with the chair, and if the chair was unavailable, the vice chair, and on down. Well, it's been pointed out to me by our very capable, I guess I really am getting away from the practice of law. Finally, not really, I don't know. You probably wouldn't want to hire me. I'll just put it that way. That the way we did it, I in a sense gave an authority to one commissioner that's not in the statute. So I think most of you get that one of you alone have no authority. 4 of you can tell us what to do and give us our marching orders, and we're gonna follow it. If it's somewhat contradictory to our law, I'm gonna beg you not to do it, but 4 of you, you have the authority. So I need to revise that And how I'd like to revise it is to take the way it's now worded, I consult with you before I would do it. So what I would like to do is propose that I would do it, given this, if the situation warrants it, and then I need to advise the chair or the vice chair, and then, of course, report that to the full commission at the very next commission meeting. And know this, I've always practiced this, and at times we've had such meetings. I don't like to do that, but we'll have a special meeting. And it's happened on a couple of occasions where I have to get you all here to Oklahoma City. We may be, I don't know if we've ever had an actual emergency meeting, which you can have under the Open Meeting Act. We have not. But I always, if it's of enough significance, and certainly, and if it's it would have to be an emergency if it's over 50,000 for me to exercise that authority. If it's not an emergency and it's over 50,000, we're going to have a special meeting. So that is the change I would ask you for, and I would need a motion.
Chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. And a second. Any further discussion? Call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Vic. Director Byrd, now approval to partner with Oklahoma Department of Commerce.
This is for an annual event we do with NBAA, with Commerce at NBAA. And this year it's in October in Orlando. As you all know, it goes one of two places, Orlando or Las Vegas. Those are the only convention centers big enough. Right now, we are planning to have a state booth that may be somewhat in jeopardy, but as of right now, that is the plan. And I will, of course, keep you apprised, but I would need your approval to partner with Commerce for such a booth.
Okay.
So
I
moved.
have a motion and a second. Motion, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
If I may ask your indulgence, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Would you mind if we skip to 10? I can cover that, and then you all don't have to really, I don't think you're hearing from me again. I can sit down.
Permission granted. Go to item 10.
As you know, NASAO, our annual convention, the National Association of State Aviation Officials, will be in Oklahoma City this year at the end of September at the Skirvin on the dates noted there, September 23 through 26. You all are of course invited. There is a draft, I'd say it's a final draft agenda of the technical sessions and the other things that will go on during the convention. We'll be sending that out to you. It'll be a little nicer form next week, because NASAO staff is working on that, and that's the one I'd like to send out to you. And then you need to communicate with myself and Jane, if you have an interest in attending any of the sessions or coming to anything else, please let us know. Communicate with us. Something I'm very proud of, the benchmark for, and keep in mind, we weren't really chosen to do this until probably November, December 2017, because how we, Phoenix it was slated for Phoenix, and the director there retired, and so therefore it became problematic, and so it was opened back up. So we competed with 5 other locations. Oklahoma City was chosen, and we've worked pretty fast and pretty hard since then. But as of this moment, the benchmark insofar as revenues and so forth for NASAO has been right around $90,000, and we have matched that. So we're getting to a point that, yes, the conference is definitely going to be paid for, and this is obviously for an association like us, just like AAAE, NBAA, this is a primary revenue generator for the association, biggest source being dues from the states. and our friends and partners that we have that are part of NASAO. But the annual convention is a very big one, so that's something we can all be proud of. We've gotten new sponsors that really had not sponsored NASAO before. Our aviation and aerospace community has stepped up here. Individual towns have stepped up, and airports, like Weatherford and the Stafford Air and Space Museum, which really I didn't know if they would, but they have. And that's been pretty remarkable and very gratifying. So, coming on, please let us know. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Director Byrd, who's the point person? Is it Sandra?
It's Jane.
Jane?
Sandra is on the committee,
Okay.
but Jane, myself, and Grayson have been, we don't want to, because it's time consuming, calling people up and encouraging them to support this endeavor. I had some other words, but I won't share those right now. But it takes time. And it takes time working to fall where the events are going to be,
Right.
the venues. It takes time.
Very much so. Appreciate you doing it all that.
Question, the dates show the 23rd to the 26th of September. That looks like to be a Monday through Wednesday, or Sunday through Wednesday.
It actually starts Sunday evening. And at that welcome reception, I'm going to be, but I think we'll have a rather significant event there involving our congressional delegation. And I'll keep you apprised of that. But it will start Sunday evening. It actually starts Sunday with an event, Sunday afternoon for all the attendees. And then Sunday evening is the welcome reception. Next morning starts with the welcome and greeting. The governor will be there to welcome everyone and tell everybody a little bit about Oklahoma Aviation and Aerospace. And then we'll start with our technical sessions.
Very good.
And those will go through Tuesday afternoon, and then there'll be a closing banquet Tuesday evening. And then Wednesday, there are some follow-up post-convention type sessions, and there might be an afternoon tour of Monroney or Tinker.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
If you know anybody who wants to sponsor a great event, let me know. Thank you.
We'll go back to item 9, and we'll go back to financial report. Jane?
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners.
Good morning.
In your packet behind number 9, you'll find the financial information for the fiscal year. It's the ending fiscal numbers for fiscal year 18. On the first page, as of June 30th, the Commission had an ending cash balance of just under $5.9 million, with encumbrances totaling $3.8 million, leaving an unencumbered balance of $2,112,373. As you can see on that same report, the remainder of the FY18 expected revenues will roll into FY19 at $842,762. And the remaining expenditures will also roll into 19 from the capital improvement program. And that is expected to be just under $2 million. Our FY18 expenditures have totaled just over $5.6 million. And then on page 2, you will notice there's a new line to our revenue, and that has to do with our license plate, which in your packet is a application if you haven't had a chance to get one and would like one, or we have one for anybody that would like one. The commission receives $24 apiece off of the sale of those that go into our revenue fund. So that's what the new line is. Our April revenue deposits totaled $435,162, with $334,651 being statutory revenue. May deposits totaled $270,502, with $266,422 being statutory. And then June, the total deposits $265,354, with $263,204 being statutory. And the graph on that page shows how the revenue flows up and down. The statutory revenues deposited for the fiscal year from July 1st through June 30th totaled $4,335,964, which actually is comparable to the deposited amount for FY17 for the same year, for same time frame, which was $4,321,847. And as you recall, we exceeded our cap in FY17 of $4.5 million that was put on the aircraft excise tax by the legislature. We exceeded it by $1.1 million, which went to the general revenue fund for the state. And so I didn't want you to wonder when you're looking at these numbers. As I've mentioned before, we watch deposited numbers because that's actual cash that we have that we can use on projects and that kind of stuff. But when the legislature looks at our revenues for that cap, it is based on collected money because the money's collected in one month and deposited the next. So I just wanted to make sure you understand that. So we look at it as deposited because that's when we've actually got the money. So if you see a discrepancy in numbers, that's the reason why, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that.
What we collected in the way of aircraft excise tax in FY18, we did not exceed the cap, did we?
No, we did not. Yeah, it was not exceeded in 18.
It was down a little bit this year.
Yes. Okay, let's see. So then, on page 3, you see the graph that does a 3-year comparison on our statutory revenues, which are received from the aircraft excise tax and excise tax and fuel tax collections is where our statutory revenue comes from. Then you have a page 4, which is the budget that had to be submitted by the end of the fiscal year, had to be submitted by June 30th. And it shows the projected budget that was submitted to the Office of Management and Enterprise Services for their approval. As the report shows, we anticipate a total revenue of $8,378,262 in revenues projected, and expenses are $9,285,245. And I know that doesn't look quite right, but we do have cash that I mentioned earlier of the $2,112,373 that will roll over, cash that will roll over from FY17 that will cover the difference, so we're not really in the hole.
Jane, on the projected revenue, have you given any estimate to the excise tax that we might collect with the 50% charter rule?
No, we have not, because I have no record of how that.
Let me point I actually meant to bring up in my legislative report. We have the 4.5 million cap on our largest source of revenue. The legislation we did with respect to the charter exemption is tied to that revenue source, aircraft excise tax. So anything we get additional to that right now, if we go over 4.5, and we of course had a bill during this entire legislature, so these 2 last sessions, to raise or eliminate, repeal our cap. And we couldn't get that one, still the budget woes, et cetera, we just couldn't climb that hill and get over it. That is one I'll bring to you at the meeting prior to the next session. That's gonna be a major focus. Revenues are better coming into the state. In fact, we just had Treasurer Miller saying all-time high. Oil and gas industries come back. Other new revenue measures put in place by the legislature. I think the time is right, so we'll be trying that to either get it raised at a minimum or repealed. The cap gone. After all, it's provided by aircraft owners and pilots. But the numbers were very uncertain from the Incentive Evaluation Commission, or I couldn't just, there were scientific accuracy about, it's been estimated we're losing 2.6 million a year Some say 3, some say 2.1. We just don't know yet. And until we see how the enforcement goes, it's really hard to peg that one. But that is something we'll be definitely trying to, because we want to reap the benefit of us addressing probably the most utilized and abused exemption.
Thank you. Great.
That answers that.
Yep.
Okay, that concludes my report, unless you have any other questions I can answer for you.
I have one, Jane, that would be, as you all recall, in the FY17 session, we did get registration fees. When the legislature, you know, it was, we didn't go forward. One of the things we looked at was aviation fuel tax, didn't go forward with that. Went forward with our attempt to address this charter exemption issue, and also went forward with, let's raise registration fees. Most pilots said, hey, you know, I pay $17 for my Cessna 172, I pay more than that for my automobile. Something's wrong with that picture. Did get those raised 50% across the board. Did our registration fees go up in FY18? I would expect that they did.
Let's see, the totals for the registration fees, yes, we had 533,085 in 17 and 631,17 in 18.
So I think we'll continue to see that hopefully grow. That'll mean a number of things about aircraft and pilots, and so.
Rick, I'm curious, who complained about the registration fees being so low?
Complain would probably be, I don't know if I use that word, but point it out. If you're going to, most of general and business aviation was more, hey, the fairest way is aviation fuel tax. That's how most states do it. For a number of reasons, we didn't go that way. But others, they'd point out actually that my registration fee is very low, you know, and ours is among the lowest. And that is, obviously, that's the chosen way we're gonna fund our needs insofar as aviation infrastructure. One of the chosen ways, the other one being the aircraft excise tax. So didn't seem to be any, I know of actually no pushback that came due to our request to raise the aircraft registration fees 50% across the board.
So it went to about $26.
Yeah, it goes up, So if you were paying $15, you're gonna pay $22.50.
Wow. Any other
Thank you
questions?
very much, appreciate it.
That would seem statistically insignificant compared to the excise tax.
Yes, yeah. But up still. I mean, up, and I think it will continue to go up. I can't remember if that went into effect November 1st, 2017. So we didn't quite have an entire fiscal year. So I think it will go up even more, Commissioner, this year. I think it's gonna be a good source. It's always, but I think it's gonna be bigger. And if we can get the cap removed, it'll be good. Be good for aviation in the state.
Is there any estimate of how many airplanes are registered in the state of Oklahoma?
Oh, there are. What would be an accurate number? There's a
There's.
inaccurate
yeah,
number of like 14,000, and then there's a more accurate number.
Probably closer to 6 or 7,000 aircraft would be more the accurate
And
number.
pilots,
That one's believable.
Pilots would be just shy of that number. I think it was closer to 5,000 or 6,000, and that's active. I mean, you look at non-airworthy aircraft and non-active pilots that haven't flown in X number of years, that number goes up. But in terms of airworthy aircraft, current registration, and current pilots, that's what we're looking at.
About 1-for-1 match.
Pretty close.
Yeah,
Pretty
good.
close.
Any other questions for Jane? Thank you. Moving on, looks like Sandra's turn. We're going to talk about the Oklahoma Municipal League Conference.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Annually, the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission has a booth at the Oklahoma Municipal League Conference, and this year is September 11th through 13th. Staff is seeking approval for a $250 exhibit fee, and I would recommend approval.
I so move.
Have a motion? Second? Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter.
Aye.
Secretary Amos.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ray.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz.
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Well, Sandra, you're still up. 99's International Conference.
So this past week, I had the opportunity, thanks to the commission, and I thank you for this, to visit Philadelphia and speak to the International Conference of 99s. There were about 400 99s there, and their organization has about 5,500 members worldwide in 44 countries. And my purpose was to go there and help the 99s emulate what Oklahoma did during the 2017 session, creating the first ever Women in Aviation and Aerospace Day. So we drafted legislation, and I'm going to, in the back of your packets, if you'll open your packets for me and head to the back. We drafted legislation for them to actually take to lawmakers within their state, and they can choose their own honoree and their own day, and they just basically have to fill in the blanks and take this to a lawmaker. We wanted to make this as simple as possible, with our goal being reaching women in aviation and aerospace, and having them appreciated for their contributions to the aviation industry. And so the Aeronautics Commission has drafted this brochure that you have here, and every year we will have an event. Last year, several of you attended our first ever Women in Aviation brunch, and Christy Slater is here with the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association, and she is assisting us. I believe she is the chairperson for this endeavor this year, and it'll be the first week in December. We haven't determined a date yet, and I believe that will be in Tulsa. Alexis Higgins is also assisting with the Tulsa Airport Authority. We had a great time, and Senator Paul Scott attended with me. He paid his own way to go to Philadelphia, which was a great show of support because he carried Senate Bill 230 for us. And the 99s are a great organization. They have an unpaid board, and they're just doing wonderful things to bring young women into aviation and aerospace careers. I'd be happy to yield for any questions. And if you want to watch my roundtable discussion, you can go to the Facebook page. All you have to do is type in the search bar, Oklahoma Women in Aviation, and it will pop up, and you can go and watch our roundtable discussion. We did a live stream for that. I'd be happy to yield to any questions, and I certainly do thank you again for any support that you give in supporting women in aviation.
Thank you.
So glad you do what you do.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, I had pictures, sorry.
Yeah,
I
pictures.
forgot. This is Senator Scott. This was our roundtable discussion. This was before we met. And I will tell you that our attendance was a little lower than, I wanted 5,000 people there, but there was a fly-in over the Hudson River in Class B airspace right over the Statue of Liberty for the 99's general aviation aircraft pilots. And so a lot of them flew there. But I took 150 of these brochures and came home with 25. So I worked that conference like you know that I would. So this is one of our Oklahoma City Chapter 99s here, and there was several people represented from different countries. And of course, these are our women in military aviation. And these are some 99s that I met. And this was our closing banquet that we had. Thank you so much.
Next item, Grayson, Kansas, Oklahoma UAS initiative.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. How's everybody doing this morning?
Good.
Good.
The Kansas Oklahoma UAS Cluster Initiative, this is a Small Business Administration initiative. It's centered around the unmanned aerial systems for Oklahoma and Kansas. I think it was originally just southern Kansas, it's now expanded to all of Kansas. They like to alternate back and forth between the states where they hold their annual conference and convention. This year it's going to be in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Last year I believe it was in Wichita, Kansas. And we'd like to consider approving a $1,500 exhibit and sponsorship for that event.
Is this through the university system with Kansas, or is it their Oklahoma, or there would be Kansas Commission for Aeronautics?
So Kansas did participate in the Kansas conference, but this is a Small Business Administration contract that they contract out with an entity to do the cluster initiative work to get the UAS industry, get ideas generated, to connect people with the businesses, and then to get people interested in the UAS industry and hopefully maybe create their own businesses
Okay.
to support the needs of UAS across the country.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any question for Grayson? I would consider a motion.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any further questions? Discussion? Call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conley.
Aye, motion passes. Grayson, now the Carlton Landing Airport utility lines.
Yes, sir. Carlton Landing Airport utility lines, I think everybody knows from past meetings that we are doing a partnership project with a private entity that we have selected going back several years at the Carlton Landing Airport, formerly the Arrowhead Airport, to where the commission will bring in and we will build the taxi lanes and the pavement. Private entity will build the vertical infrastructure, the hangars and the fuel farm, to really get some activity at that airport. As you know, there's no based aircraft, no fuel, no hangars, really only tie downs and a runway out there for airports. Unfortunately, during the process of the geotechnical investigation and doing some coring and drilling, they ran into a water line and then subsequently a gas line. So as you can imagine, these lines were put in, I don't know, decades ago, 40, 50, 60 years ago, probably when the park first got started. And so we have to relocate those utility lines outside or from underneath where our hangars and our pavement are going to go. The lines are owned and support the Narconon entity that's out there at the Arrowhead Park. And so we're going to request giving Director Byrd authority to enter into an agreement to partner with the necessary partners to share the costs of the relocation of those utility lines, looking at 3 partners, 2 partners, but be between us, the OAC, the private entity, Carlton Landing Operating Company, Kirk Humphreys, and then Narconon themselves. So
Is there an estimate on the cost yet?
there will be. That's $100,000, and you'll see that in one of Dale's items.
Okay.
He's going to be requesting approval for that under item number 18. That's the estimated cost right now is about $100,000 total. About $9,000 for design fees. Right now, the consultant's giving a conservative estimate about $80,000 actual construction cost, but we'd like to have a little buffer in there in case bids come in a little high, because they haven't started design yet. That's what Dale's going to be requesting here momentarily.
Are these utilities located in an easement?
They are not in an easement, no.
Then why are we spending a dime?
Well,
That
that's
should be their problem and their expense, not the Carlton Landing Airport and not the aviation community.
that is a
Cap them and let them run them somewhere else, but that is not our entity to worry about.
that is a good point. As pointed out by our private entity that had a couple attorneys look at this, the attorney's fees that we would get into in kind of a situation of that nature would far exceed us just going ahead and relocating the lines ourselves.
Doubtful. If it's not in an easement, they have no case. If they put in lines and they didn't have legal easement to put them in, there's not much of a case.
You need to address that, because tourism that either loans the land or has a 99-year lease with Army Corps.
Army Corps,
They granted, I believe,
correct.
I don't know if it was an easement, Commissioner, probably wasn't, but they granted authority. They entered into an agreement with Narconon to allow them to lay the lines.
The line.
So de facto, perhaps, that's kind of snookered us in a way, though, a bit, that was allowed. And then your next question may be, I'm trying to predict, I don't know if I can predict your next question, but you'd make a good judge. You'd make a good judge. But why in tourism sharing in this? Well, we're the statutory sponsor of the airport. That's why they're not sharing. They never did share in matches required for federal grants or so forth. But I'd certainly let you talk to Secretary Snodgrass.
I'd
You'd
love
probably be good.
Yeah, if there's not a designated utility easement,
I hear you.
simply the prior owner, I'd have to look at the document, but.
We seem to have some more information available over here.
Don't,
I was just thinking, the lines weren't put in for Narconon, they were put in for the state
For the lodge.
For the lodge.
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago. And whenever Narconon took over the state lodge, they took over the water lines that were in place. That was already providing service to them. And we've came in and say, we want to build hangars on top of those lines. So,
I just don't wanna spend $100,000 of this agency's money when it's not necessary.
About 33,000 max.
The question I have is from an engineering perspective, why is it necessary to move them if they're deep enough?
When you come to vertical development, you don't ever want water lines, especially old water lines like this. If you have to go repair those water lines at that point in time, that
Then they
could
have to go
impact the
around.
hangars, could cause washout, could cause any kinds of issues with the vertical development or the pavement underneath them. Because they're not, I don't know what the depth is, but I know they're not deep enough to put vertical structure on top of.
Okay.
Where was it that I saw an estimate of $100,000?
That is the estimate. So about
Probably-
$9,000 for the design of the project, and estimated construction cost about $80,000. But shared.
Item, what item is that, Dale?
That's 18.
18A, Commissioner.
Got it.
So our share would be about 1/3?
About 1/3, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so right now, we're just giving Vic approval to enter into an agreement. We're not talking about the money yet.
Right, yeah, we're just
Okay.
giving him approval to move into an agreement to move the lines and share the cost and
I wouldn't enter into it too zealously, too easy to agree to.
Hear you. A
Hold
little
out.
reluctant?
I would be very reluctant. See if
think
there's
I'm-
any way at all you can make somebody else bear that. I mean, they're the ones that need heat and water, right?
I think I'm taking you with me, the art of the deal.
Okay, any further questions? No questions? I'd entertain a motion. Staff does recommend approval, correct?
correct.
Okay.
So to clarify, we're approving you entering into it, reluctantly entering.
Yeah, provided we like it and.
The ability.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not wanting to exercise my
Right.
delegated authority. I want to bring it to you all. There's time here, so.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
in a second. Any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes. Grayson, you're still up with Texoma Municipal Airport Intergovernmental.
This is for a project that's in the commission CIP. It's one of the ones that Jane mentioned that's rolling from 18 to 19. We are waiting on a asphalt plant to return to the Guyman area out in the Panhandle. This is going to be a project to overlay a runway, but not do it via the standard design process that might cost us $1 million or $2 million. But basically, we're having the county and several partners haul asphalt from the plant to the airport and then lay down that asphalt on base that the airport has already turned up and created into a decent stabilized base. This intergovernmental agreement will allow us to move into the process, to have the city do some survey work and start that. And then once the contractor has given us a formal quote, and we can help the city out with that quote and the technical expertise needed for the project, we will bring that back to you for approval for the actual cost of the quote and the final project, probably in August, perhaps in September. But we're hoping that the asphalt plant is back in place in September in order to get this done by the time winter sets in the Panhandle.
Questions for Grayson on this topic? Chair to entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Motion to approve
Second.
and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 16, the closure of Lake Murray Park Airport.
Glad to announce that this will be the last time we have this on the agenda, the informational only. I know this is a long project that's been going on since, Vic, 2011, 2012? 12. As you know, we've entered into many letters, agreements, gone through the FAA process to close the Lake Murray Airport, which is an obligated airport. Beautiful airport, Ardmore downtown, just 5 miles up the road, so this was not considered a wise investment to repair and to develop and to maintain this airport. I think you know some of the other things that went on into the closure of the airport, but as of June 13th, the painting had been put down on the runway, the NOTAMs had been issued, and during the next 56-day cycle of the Airport Facilities Directory, it will no longer be in existence. So we can close the chapter.
Tourism's intention, because this is, you know, their new lodge and everything, it wants to
It's-
make this,
Well, for the time being, it's just going to return to grass.
Yeah.
So it will just continue to become part of the natural grassland. Long-term, I don't know if tourism has identified any plans for the airport, but just, it'll return back to the natural grassland. We'll no longer be obligated to maintain it and expend monies to maintain it in a safe and operable fashion. And pilots will still be able to get to the lodge via Ardmore downtown, which not only has a 5,000-foot runway, but it has instrument approaches, has fuel, has overnight hangars, and has tie-downs too, and courtesy cars.
I definitely remember this one. It's my first meeting as chair.
So no more contentious meetings with Commerce,
No more.
Tourism at the Capitol, not this one.
No.
yeah, this, yeah. I think that we're meeting Secretary Snodgrass on the X to,
Thank you
So-
for the information, Grace.
Absolutely.
Item 17 is the FAA Miscellaneous Planning Grant.
The FAA Miscellaneous Planning Grant, this is very similar to the preliminary engineering reports that we do for large discretionary big rock projects. Because there's some uncertainties in this particular project and because the environmental has not been completed yet due to those uncertainties, we're sticking with a planning grant. So preliminary engineering takes a fairly deep dive, 30% design. You have to have environmental to do that, an actual environmental, determine are there bugs out there, are there any waterways in your area that you're going to be disturbing, so on and so forth, the NEPA requirements. We're taking a little higher level look, the planning study, which doesn't require nearly the environmental work, pre-environmental work for this particular project. Still get a cost estimate, still get a scope, still get a timeline for the parallel taxiway realignment and all the other projects associated with that parallel taxiway. There's going to have to be some moving of some hangars, moving of some taxi lanes, perhaps the expansion or some changing of the apron. But that's what this project will do. So the commission is, or the staff's requesting that the commission will enter into this project and will, contingent upon making the grant offer, will accept that grant offer from FAA. Estimate to be about $80,000 total cost, obviously at a 90-10 split, $72,000 coming from FAA, $8,000 coming from OAC. Staff recommends approval for moving forward with this process.
some of you are familiar with the Aviation Aerospace company. They're very successful in Enviro Systems that does climate control systems for a number of aircraft, including like the Embraer Phenom aircraft. It's been a real success story. President used to be a fellow named Craig Froelich that I know some of you knew. I'm slipping my mind, but they're going to be, so this is going to move that a little bit, right? Aren't they a little impacted right now by the?
Their parking lot could potentially be impacted. That's part of what the study will look at, is whether or not the separation, the runway taxiway separation, their standard separation distances to maintain FAA standards for the various size of aircraft. Obviously, bigger the aircraft, the more the separation has to be. The study will look at how much of the parking lot will go away. I think we're 100% certain that none of the buildings will have to go away, but perhaps some of the parking lot might be encroached upon a retaining wall that would go where the future parallel taxiway would go. So they might lose some parking spaces. But this study will identify how many and where that retaining wall needs to be located, how tall the retaining wall needs to be, and how expensive that retaining wall will be.
Okay. Other questions for Grayson on this subject? Chair would entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Grayson.
This will not
Thank you,
change it'll be a 90-10 grant. So the local match 10, we'll get 5 of it, but the city will still get 5 of it.
Say that again?
90-10
Right.
from the FAA.
No, this is like the permit, so the grant's coming to OAC.
Okay, so
So
we'll
on-
make the whole
We'll
10.
make the whole 10. On the big discretionary project, yes, it will be a
95.5.
95.5, yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be 90 FAA, 5 OAC, and 5% local sponsor on the discretionary construction project. Whereas this is again, this is before the preliminary engineering report. There will probably be some kind of an engineering report after the planning study would be done. So this is prior to the preliminary engineering. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks. Item 18, Capital Improvement Grant Program. Dale.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I have several items for your consideration this morning. The first one is Carlton Landing Phase 1. It is for the design and relocation of a gas and water line. You'll see the blue line is the water line and the red line is the gas line. Your approval is contingent upon the approval of an agreement. Should we receive an acceptable agreement and Vic reluctantly signs it, your approval would allow us to, staff to move forward and contract for the, actually to have the work done. Staff recommends approval, estimated at $100,000.
Yeah, we've had some discussion on this already. So is there other discussion on this item? No other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I would move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve.
So
Okay.
what are we approving here? He's gonna enter into it.
Should,
He's got to do the agreement first.
Okay.
And then if that agreement goes forward, then we would approve the 30%.
Okay, all right.
and allowing the staff to move forward and contract for those
What comes
services.
first?
Trying to,
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Verification? Okay, hearing none. Call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes.
Your next
Yep.
item is for a amendment to a state grant, which was at the last commission meeting at Broken Bow. It corrects a administrative error that was on the grant application. The cost is $600, the state share is $570, and the city share is $30. This will correct the administrative error and fully fund the project. Staff recommends approval.
What was the administrative error? Just numbers?
Did-
Math?
On the, what we call the B2, which has all the different costs for the administration, the engineering,
Okay.
construction.
Gotcha. Okay, questions? Entertain a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye. Motion passes.
Next item is for a project that's identified in the approved capital improvement program for Clinton Regional Airport. The project consists of installing new LED medium-intensity runway lights and a new PAPI system. Total cost is $487,958 and will be funded with $463,559 of state grant funds, $24,399 of sponsor matching funds, and the approval is contingent upon us receiving an acceptable grant application. Staff recommends approval. I got Ms. Tracy Yoder here from the city of Clinton that will stand, make comment, or answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
So the state, or the city is kicking in $24,399? Okay. And the Aeronautics Commission's share is $463,000?
Yes, sir. It's a 95.5% grant, our standard grant.
Just a general question on LEDs though versus the current system that we have. What's the life expectancy of an LED system?
Well, it's much longer and much cheaper. Can I have the engineer
Sure.
answer that?
Yeah.
Toby, tell them how great it is.
Typically, the LED fixtures are rated for over 10,000 hours. None of the FAA certified runway lights have been hit long enough to see if we actually hit that yet, but that's what the manufacturer is projecting for this grant.
what kind of lines are you running to each light now? Are they different? Are they replacing the lines, or are they just gonna use the existing?
No, we will actually put in all new conduit and all new
Okay.
wiring. The existing wiring is over 25 years old, and so it's a good target of opportunity
Okay.
to replace that. But the new circuit will be in conduit.
Okay, great. Thank you. Staff recommends approval. I
Staff
think.
recommends approval.
Any other questions for Dale on this subject?
Is there any federal money in that, or is that just our?
Not on this project, no.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter.
Aye.
Secretary Amos.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ray. Commissioner Ritz.
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye, motion passes.
Next item is for a project that's identified in the approved capital improvement program for Durant Regional, Ecker Field. The project consists of rehabilitating and overlaying the existing pavement that's out there, and then extending the runway 1,800 feet. On the existing runway, there'll be a leveling course that will correct some of the deficiencies of the non-standard transverse and the non-standard longitudinal grade for the runway. And the extension is going to be 1,800 feet, but FAA will only participate in 1,200 feet of, based on the aviation or traffic at the airport. So the sponsor has kicked in the remaining money, about $1.8 million, to do the additional 600 feet that they're wanting. The total project cost is $6,489,166. Federal share is $4,264,707. State is making the federal required match for the federal funds only of $224,458, and the sponsor is putting in $2,001,001. Approval is contingent upon the staff commission receiving an acceptable grant application. We've got Mr. Matt Cook with the city of Durant here to make a comment, answer any questions.
Marty Cook with City of Durant. I consider it an honor to be able to speak with you guys and to listen to you debate these subjects. This is a project we've been working on for quite a while, and even though I'm new to aviation, I appreciate the job you do in promoting that throughout the state. So it's been fantastic. Like you said, we've come up with a match on this with local partners as well. There's quite a bit of incentive around the area with new industry that we have going on that they're willing to help out a little bit too. So we're excited.
You have some good partners, don't you?
Yeah.
Can you share that with us, your partner?
I can. It was actually put in a council agenda. Nothing's been publicized, but Choctaw Nation is definitely helping us out on this with a big part of that $2 million. We also have some support from Southeastern Oklahoma State University, who's on site as well, and a couple other local partners who are going to help us support with some of the construction efforts.
What's the new runway length going to be once it's extended?
6801 would be the new length.
What drives
It's
it to that?
5,001 right now.
Okay, what drives it to that length?
We did justifications, and again, I told you I'm new to aviation. I've been in this position for a little under a year. The justification process came through before I was in there.
Where you at, Tyler?
There we go. Tyler can help me with that.
There's some large aircraft users that are currently using the airport that can't take off with a full load of fuel. So that's been a lot of the justification was actually existing aircraft that needed a longer runway in order to operate on a full load and be able not to have to stop a couple hours down the road, or down the air, I guess, in order to get the fuel, make it to the destination they're going to. So that was the majority of the justification.
How many aircraft
Resort
are based
in
at
the
this
area,
field?
we're getting more and more jet traffic, and that has really been a push for us. I think we're basing 10 or 12 jets there now at least, but I bet we get that many visitors every month as well.
How many aircraft total are based at your field?
We're based about 75, 77. I've got about 50 that are in leased hangars the city owns. And I've got, Choctaw has a ground lease, Southeastern bases their own, I don't know, 8 or 10, so about 75, 77.
Staff recommends approval.
Side note, though, well, we'll do this first. Any further questions for Dale? Any motion?
So moved.
Motion and a second? Okay, further discussion? Okay, Staff has recommended approval. Call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye, motion passes. The question I had, Dale, was has the issue with the taxi lanes we put in at Eaker Field been resolved?
Are you talking about the very south ones, far
Mhm.
south? Yes.
Okay, I'm just curious.
For the new hangar area?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item E.
The next item is for a project that's identified in the approved capital improvement program for El Reno Regional Airport. The project consists of reconstructing the main apron. If you look at the screen up there, the existing apron outlined in red will be removed, and that little yellow area there is the fuel facility. That is going to be relocated at this time, but with a federal grant. And so for our portion is just reconstructing the apron there. So they'll remove all that existing area and then construct that red area that's in that bottom photo. The total project cost for the project is $306,517. State grant funds is $234,760. And the sponsor's share is $71,757. Got the city manager, Matt Sandage is here to make a comment.
Matt Sandage, Assistant City Manager, City of El Reno. Appreciate your consideration of the project. Obviously, as Mr. Williams mentioned, this will allow us to reconstruct our fuel farm and allow for future growth and sustainability at our airport. The city is a very important project for the city, and we are contributing significant portion to it.
Thank you.
Staff recommends approval.
Okay, staff recommend approval. Any questions for Dale on this topic?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye, motion passes. Item F, Dale.
Okay, next item is for a project identifying the approved capital improvement program for Mcalister Regional Airport. The project consists of, on the photograph there, the red area at the bottom there, that's 1,600 feet. That'll be a complete reconstruction of the old pavement, total width and total depth. The blue center area will be the keel section, which is, it's a 100-foot wide runway. It will be reconstruction of only the center 50 feet of the blue area. So it's reconstruction of the keel area, and then just rehab the outside panels and diamond grind them smooth. And then on the south area, it's only about, or the north area, the yellow area, it's only about 10 years old. Will be just basic spall repair and things of that nature. Total project cost is $4,613,503. Will be funded with $4,152,151 of federal grant funds, $230,675 of state grant funds, $230,677 of sponsor matching funds. The state commission is making half the federal required match for the sponsor, and approval is contingent upon receiving an acceptable grant application. Got Mr. David Hornick here with the city of Mcalister.
Good morning. I'm Public Works Director with the City of Mcalister. I'd like to thank everyone there for your consideration of the project, the advice, counsel that I've gotten from the OAC staff to help us through some of the bumps. I'm relatively new to the industry, or relatively new to airports, not the industry. And, again, see,
Staff recommends approval.
Very good. Any questions for Dale on this subject?
How many aircraft are served by this?
Based.
45?
Yeah, 50.
About 50.
50.
Air ambulance.
Okay. Other questions?
The length of the new runway when it's all done?
Say again?
The length of the runway when it's done?
5,600 is what it is now, I believe. There's no extension, it's just basic reconstruction and rehab of the remainder of it.
Chair will entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Kane.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item, Dale.
It's for a project that's identified in the capital improvement program at Watonga Municipal Airport. The project consists of installing a new AWAS system. Total project cost is $156,282. I'm sorry, my apologies. The total cost is $165,074. State share is $156,820, and the sponsor's match is $8,224. Approval is contingent upon receiving an acceptable grant application from the sponsor. Got Mrs. Gina Oman here from the city of Watonga.
We've had multiple outages with our AWAS
Is this one of those, is this an AWAS issue that we're
when it was,
FAA
put in,
won't fund?
because I'm fairly new to the airport as well, been there over a year. The outages really stop a lot of our traffic from coming in. We have multiple, larger
Yeah.
aircraft that are bringing
Yeah.
business people in for the oil and gas industry. And we also have 2 different aerial applicators that run off of our airport, and it really makes it hard when those outages, were happening. So we're trying to keep that from happening because our existing AWAS, we cannot find parts to utilize, having becoming a major issue.
Got Grayson with an additional comment.
If you all remember, Commissioners, I think it was at the May meeting or perhaps the March meeting, we talked about how the FAA has a very high bar with their new benefit cost analysis that precludes many of our airports from getting these AWAS 3s, even though we as pilots know weather is very important. Usually that BCA is about $30,000, $40,000. So the state stepping up and funding this is saving the airport some significant money in the overall long-term costs. And the sponsor is helping us out on another project by transferring some of their NPE funds, non-primary entitlement funds, to that airport. So this is one of those innovative things that we had talked about. I think it was at the May meeting where we're trying to find efficient ways to stretch our dollars as far as they will go.
I'm curious why it cost $165,000. I put in an AWAS 3 at Sundance 3 years ago, and it was $85,000.
That I don't know. I'd have to look at the plans and specs of
They go
each
for
system.
bids. It's low bid. They do the public bidding process.
Do we want to let them?
It was competitively bid. We did have to replace the tower, the existing tower. FAA, their last commissioning inspector said that it had to be replaced, so that adds fairly significant cost. I believe it was about 2 years ago when Faisal was bought out by DET. They're one of the sole providers of AWASs now, and since then, they said that they have had significant parts increases. We too, compared to AWASs that we did 4 to 5 years ago, have seen a fairly significant cost increase.
All right, thank you.
Staff recommends approval.
Any further discussion? Questions? Have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second? Further discussion?
Sorry.
Call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Kane.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item, Dale.
Final item is for the commission staff to act as agent for several of the airports listed there. We received request letters from the airports asking the staff to act as agent in accordance with Section 3, Title 3, Section 85, which allows the staff to act as the agent for the city with our expert experience. And what we're going to do in this project is conduct preliminary engineering reports at several airports, and then do the environmental NEPA documentation, which is the environmental portion, so that we can move them into a preliminary engineering report in the future. At Jonesville Memorial Bristow Airport, we're going to do the engineering report on the existing runway, which is going to be converted into a parallel taxiway for the new runway that's being constructed at this time. At Grove is going to be for the rehab of the runway and install new lighting, runway lights also. At Guyman will be for the rehab of the runway and the parallel taxiway system. And SkyTook is rehab of the runway, and then NEPA at Fairview, and the NEPA documentation for the South Grand Lake Regional Airport. At Fairview, it's for the north portion of the parallel taxiway, the north section only. And at South Grand Lake will be for the construction of a new parallel taxiway system to the runway. They currently do not have a taxiway system there. Staff recommends approval.
A question, help me with the acronym, MIRL?
Medium intensity runway lights.
Thank you.
MITL would be medium intensity taxiway lights.
Thank you.
Very important. Other questions? Chair to entertain a motion. We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter.
Aye.
Secretary Amos.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ray.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz.
Aye.
Chairman Conley.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Dale. Catherine, going to talk about aviation and aerospace education grants.
Good morning. We're in the process of reviewing the applications we've received for the FY19 aviation grant program. We received 31 applications this year, which as far as I can tell is the most we've ever received. That includes 9 new applicants, and in total they've requested over $650,000. So with our budget being around $250,000, we definitely have a lot of decisions to make. And we will try to help as many people as we can, as we always do. I've put some information in your packet that I would encourage you to look at before our August meeting. Our August meeting will be dedicated almost entirely to the aviation education, and we're going to do our best to keep it short this year with all the applicants that we have. So I encourage you all to be there for that meeting. It's always very informative and a very important meeting. Are there any questions about AVID?
Well, we have a couple of new commissioners. Could you kind of go over how you make your decisions and selections for awards?
Sure. So every year, May 31st is our deadline. We receive applications from any program out there in the state. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit or anything like that. Any private entity or school can apply for an aviation and aerospace education grant, and they fill out an application detailing their program. It has to be related to aviation and aerospace. So they give us all of the information regarding their programs, what topics are covered, how it's related, how it's relevant, and how we can help get more people, more students interested in aviation and aerospace through their program. And then we go through a process of just reviewing each application very detailed to make sure that we understand what the program is going to be like and how it may benefit our students. And then I do the preliminary review, and then I'll sit down with Grayson and then sit down with Director Byrd to make the final determinations on how much we can fund for each program. And like I said, we try to make our budget stretch as far as we can and benefit as many programs as possible, given that we have about $250,000 to work with. Thank you.
Catherine? Thank you very much.
Well, we need another 300,000.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm lost here. Recent tall structure fatal aircraft collisions. Grayson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everyone here has seen the news in the last month and a half, the 2 unfortunate collisions that have happened between agricultural aviation and towers throughout the state of Oklahoma, and it's caught some national attention too. It's unfortunate. We had met with the gentleman of one of those accidents a week and a half before the accident when we were talking about the CIP for the airport in Medford. These things happen. Agriculture aviation, it's a dangerous job. I don't know what the ranking was, but I do remember a show as a kid on Discovery Channel, you know, the most dangerous jobs in the world, and ag spraying was definitely one of them because of the fact that you're in the low altitude environment. And the reason we wanted to talk about this today is I think you all kind of understand, but the general public may not understand. They see that we have these protections for anemometer towers. We see they have these protections through the Aircraft Pilot and Passenger Protection Act. And they go, well, why is the Aeronautics Commission not doing something about this? You know, we actually got a couple of calls from various media after the accidents happened of, will you guys have something on board? They stood with us through the anemometer tower bill in 2014. They stood with us through the APA bill in 2010. But why weren't these towers marked appropriately? And what it boils down to is, yes, it's just these are different towers. So anemometer tower is a specific tower, usually less than 200 foot, that measures wind through the area. Our anemometer tower marking bill requires that those towers be marked appropriately and have the marker balls and the guy wire sleeves on the towers. But that's just one subset of towers in one area of aviation. That was actually precipitated by a crash in the Panhandle where an ag sprayer was killed because they ran into a anemometer tower. And then APA, as you all know, APA just protects the vicinity of the airport. So it's only looking at permitting and our zoning authority in the immediate vicinity of the airport, 3 miles in radius around the center point of the airport, and then probably about 9 miles off the end of the runway to protect the approach and departure paths. Most of these collisions, I think a vast majority of all the collisions that happen when it comes to ag sprayers and towers, they're out in the middle of a field far away from any airport. And so that's one of the things that the ag sprayer community, I know I talked with the Oklahoma Ag Operators Association. I speak to their conference every year. They're looking at things that they might recognize on a federal level because these towers were required to be marked by the FAA, but unfortunately, just because the tower was marked was not a good enough visual indicator for the pilot. It was the guy wires that really get it. And these guy wires can extend out, depending on how tall the tower is, sometimes 700 or 1,000 feet from the base of the tower. And so as unfortunate as it might be, these are accidents that happen in this environment. And I know there's probably going to be a hard look at the federal level of maybe certain towers requiring some kind of instrumentation on the guy wires. I don't know how they're going to come to do that because I know the taller the tower is, the harder it is to get those marker balls on there, and then the harder it is to maintain those marker balls. Because as you know, they're painted, they fade over time. So what used to be an orange marker ball will quickly turn into a white marker ball 5-10 years on down the road. So it's unfortunate. I know we'll be looking at it. We'll be waiting to hear what the formal reports are from the NTSB as they go through their studies. But as most of you all know, the NTSB doesn't have a whole lot of data to go on because these aircraft don't have any black box recorders or anything of that nature. Unless somebody actually saw the accident, all they have to go on is the post-crash assessment of the aircraft and the tower. They don't actually know what was happening in the cockpit at the time of the crash. So I think pretty much the NTSB is going to come out with some kind of maybe a recommendation or perhaps maybe some pilot training initiatives of some sort to ensure that aviation can be safe, but also that we operate within these towers, whether it's a cell phone tower, communications tower, anemometer tower, whatever tower might be out there, whatever tall structure might be out there, that pilots can operate safely in that environment without any of these unfortunate fatal accidents or any accidents whatsoever. So that being said, I want to keep it brief, but if you guys have any questions, or Director Burr, if you'd like to expound upon any areas, be happy to answer them.
Both of those are fatals, weren't they?
They were both fatals, yes, sir, unfortunately.
Wire strikes?
I think one was a wire strike, and the other, I think, actually, he struck the wire first and then the tower, but I know part of the tower came down on, I think, the first one.
The first one it's about 1,200 feet.
Okay,
They hit the guy wires.
okay.
And then the tower.
And then the tower collapsed after that. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but in talking with the ag sprayers, that's the life they live. And I mean, I think both pilots were spraying near that vicinity the previous day, so it wasn't like they were in a new environment and they didn't know their surroundings, that they were there. And it's just one of those things, early in the morning, late in the evening, you're low, you're in a turn, the sun gets in your eyes, and sometimes you lose your spatial awareness. You just don't know where you are. And when you're making those turns in low altitude environments with obstructions nearby, it's unfortunate. It's a tough business to be in.
Further questions for Grayson on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Catherine, you're back with the Aircraft Pilot and Passenger Protection Act.
As Grayson mentioned, this is our zoning law that protects airports from tall structures or incompatible structures that might cause a hazard to air navigation. Since our last update, which was back in January, we have issued several permits for antenna towers and a water tower. We currently have 2 permits pending, one for a wind turbine in Hinton And then another one, you'll notice this is actually an incompatible use structure. This is not one that we see very often. I think I've maybe done one since I've worked here. And this is for a structure that's being planned near Ada Airport. It actually falls within our requirements for APA, but outside of the airport's RPZ, existing and future RPZ. So we don't think it's going to be an issue for the airport. We're currently waiting for comments from the city before we proceed with that one. And then on the bottom of your sheet, these are just the preliminary reviews that we do, and of those, only one needed a permit, and that's already been issued. Are there any questions about APA?
I see the wind turbine, and I know Commissioner Putnam brings up all the time, and it's a very important question about the military training routes.
Yes.
Are we doing anything at all in that endeavor to highlight these applications to the military?
So I believe that there's a new law.
Yes,
regarding that.
there's a new bill that was passed this year to make sure that applicants, if there was a wind turbine, that they would forward that on to the Corporation Commission and the Strategic Military Planning Commission so that they could get comments from the base. As you know, we have a good relationship with Mike Cooper, the chairman of the Strategic Military Planning Commission. So anytime we see something like this pop up, as just an extra layer, we go ahead and forward it to him for his attention, and then he can disperse that out to either the other commissioners, depending on which base it affects, or he just might go straight to the base and talk to them too. But yes, the bill that, I don't know what the bill number was, but that was passed this past session to provide notice for any wind turbines being built in the state of Oklahoma to the Strategic Military Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Catherine?
It's, as I've talked to you all about at the last meeting, it doesn't, the state is not exercising any of its zoning authority, regulatory authority with respect to that issue right now. And it does not do that by this new legislation either. It's simply, it provides notice, and the applicant is required to file proof that it went through the federal process, which it has to, of course, the FAA process, Part 77 process, and that almost always probably the DOD's involved, so the DOD clearinghouse that you've heard me, but the state's not, unlike Indiana, which does utilize its zoning authority to protect such airspace, that legislation did not require that here.
So at the federal and state level, we have no teeth to keep them out of the military training routes.
Well, at the federal level, we do, and both Inhofe and Russell have worked on that to improve that, and I really hope that what they've done accomplishes what is needed for our bases. That remains to be seen.
Okay.
Can you tell me about the tower at wind turbine at Hinton? Where's that going to be located roughly?
So I'm actually not working on that. Jen, do you?
I can't remember where exactly it's located. I've had it for months, but there's no FAA determination on it yet, so it's still.
Because the airport's just north of town, as I recall.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
replaced an old study that we were looking at, and then they canceled that, popped a new one up in the same spot. So this has been going on for about like a year now. So I can't exactly remember which one. It's a wind farm, but only one turbine falls within the ALPA limitations.
Okay.
But no FAA determination yet, so we're just
Do you know how big this turbine is?
I would guess
It's 500 feet probably.
Got it, thank you.
This y'all might, Hinton is the city that passed an ordinance that no wind turbines to be built within 2 miles of the city limits, I believe. And they were promptly sued in federal court by one of the wind energy companies. I think that case was dismissed with an intention stated by the wind energy company it was going to refile it. I don't know that that's been done. We have talked to, I know Grayson and I have spoken with, I believe, the mayor about what the current situation is, what can be done. We've given them some advice. So.
I can give you information on the exact location if you
Yep.
want.
I'm just curious, thank you.
Might email that out to all the commissioners.
All right, that'd be good.
Thank you. Okay. Met Tower update.
So we do have our website, for those who may not know, we keep a database of all of the anemometer towers in the state, and we require markings for those. We require seven alternating bands of orange and white. We also require marker balls and safety sleeves on the guy wires. And we have a website where owners of these towers can go and register them, give us the location, and confirm that they are marked. We then send out or have a spreadsheet available for pilots who might want to download that to know where the locations of these structures are, because they are a hazard to low-flying aircraft. So we want to make sure that their presence is known. So for that database, we have 43 active users, so that's 43 sponsors, wind companies and otherwise that have these anemometer towers out there, and a total of 462 towers that are listed. And that locations of all of those are made available to pilots or anyone else who's interested. So, are there any
That's,
questions?
this applies to Met towers under 200 feet. It's really we were given fairly broad purview with some parameters by the legislature, and we did this by way of rules. I won't go there, medical marijuana and the State Board of Health. It's okay, just scratch that. But we did address it by way of rules. But FAA regulates, of course, 200 foot and up. So it's been something that we've implemented. Now, I believe these are these are requirements insofar as the applicants, et cetera, on below 200 feet.
We might consider implementing some exemptions to that, just for the purpose of sanity. Because I have a 30-foot anemometer tower that went into place with my AWAS, and it's painted in beautiful bands of white, alternating white and red, with not one but two beacons at the top of this 30-foot tower. And 50 foot away, there's a 45-foot telephone pole next to it with absolutely no markings whatsoever and beautiful wood. It's a
So,
little outrageous.
I think
that-
under 50 feet, right?
Yeah, under 50, that was an FAA marking requirement.
Under 50 feet.
Because it was on his airport?
Because it was on his airport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a phone pole that has since been dropped in.
Is that an
right there.
encouragement for more regulation? Maybe we should get the phone pole?
Why don't you try making the utility companies bury their
Okay.
Do you know if all
You'll help us with the
towers
Corporation
have been marked?
Commission, we'll take that on.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have any in our database that are not marked.
Any further questions for Catherine? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grayson, you're back with Ardmore Municipal Airport Survey.
Last but not least. What we're requesting here today is for photometric survey work. This is where an aircraft will go around and take very high definition photographs of the entire airport property and is able to survey that information to within inches of the actual spot of where that physical structure would be. This is to go to support the development of instrument approach procedures for the airport there at Ardmore Municipal. They have obstructions off the ends of actually all 4 of their runways that are reducing minimums of some form or fashion, or they're causing what we have call the 20-to-1 visual area surface. That's the area surface that has to be clear if the airport wants to have night instrument approach minimums. And so that's what this survey is to go do, is to go out there, figure out what obstructions are out there, which surface do they penetrate, and then how is the airport going to be able to remove those or mitigate them by putting a light out there. If it's a telephone pole, for example, or you can go out and light trees if you want. I know not people don't like to do that, but that is one option that is a possibility. Is if you can't take the tree down, you can go out and put a pole next to the tree and put a light on it to mitigate it. But in order to do that, we need to know what kind of obstructions are out there to help the airport and get some up-to-date information, because the survey that's developing the instrument approach procedure is a little aged and it's a little old. And so we want to make sure that when flight check comes in, that they don't find a bunch of new obstructions that will prohibit the airport from getting an instrument approach. So if we find that this photometric survey, it's been done before, it's been done at Durant, it's been done at several airports in Texas. If this is a wide-ranging, we might come back to you in a couple of years and maybe do a cluster. We can kind of consider this maybe a test case scenario. So we might come back and do 5 or 6 or maybe 10 or 12 airports on down the road as a group, get some benefits of cost for doing that all together instead of just a one-off location. But we figured Ardmore Municipal was the best, because they were having that instrument approach procedure development. They were wanting approaches to their secondary runway 1735, their primary being 1331, which already has an ILS system. And I think you all know it has some of the MALS rail system issues too. But this is going to help all of that with Ardmore Municipal and give us great survey data for the whole airport. So I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Grayson on this topic?
Tell me the funding source again, please.
Funding source will be OAC. We'll be doing this through the DCS IDIQ program, so capital assets management. So a lot of times, for example, I don't know who on this commission was here when we used to do preliminary engineering reports in-house, but when we needed geotech work or survey work, we could go to the IDIQ program, select a consultant. They are right there. They're ready to go. IDIQ means indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery. Flip-flop that, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, and just allows us to have ease of access to those folks.
Any other questions? Hearing none. I entertain your motion.
I move for approval.
Have a motion to approve. And looking for a second.
Second.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote, please.
Vice Chair Potter,
Aye.
Secretary Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Chairman Conley.
Aye, motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Sandra, upcoming aviation events, there's a long list.
Commissioners, we are on final approach to the ending of this meeting, and I just want to thank you so much for your attention today on this last item. The 137th Special Operations Wing has invited us, thank you to Commissioner Amos for assisting us with this, and Director Byrd, to tour the 137th Operations Wing this afternoon. We'll be doing that at 1:30. I have visited with Lieutenant Mitchell, and there is air conditioning provided. And so the flight line will not be as rigorous as we thought it would be. I hope that if you told me you could not come and you've decided you want to come, please see me after the meeting. We would love to have you there. We'll be welcomed by Colonel Hayworth, and there'll be a base tour and a lot of flight line displays, and I'd love to have you there. Okay, upcoming Oklahoma aviation events. You can see in the very back of your packet, and I have extras for the audience if they would care to take one. There are always fly-ins happening. Wanted to point out a few points of interest. That the Eaa Navigation Challenge is going to be at Sundance on July 14th. I think that's this weekend, and would encourage you to go out for that as well. And the Okie Derby for the 99s is August 18th at Sundance. And August 14th is Tinker in the Primes, and that is a prime contractors trade show over at near Tinker, I think.
The Reed Center.
Yeah, they're at the Reed Center. If you would like to attend that, please see me or Director Byrd, and I'd be happy to.
Partnering of Commerce.
Yes.
State booth there.
Yes. And of course, there's information about our NASEO trade show as well. And I wanted to say that the 99s have partnered with EAA over in Virginia to do first flights for young female aviators. And I met someone that did their son did their first flight. He was 12 years old, and I met them in Philadelphia on a bus. And she said it changed his life, and he's choosing an aviation career. He's in flight school and taking pilot's lessons right now at 12 years old. So I don't know. That's what she said. So we'll see if that's true or not. But I appreciate the work you do, Commissioner Putnam, and I appreciate that so much. Is there any questions about any upcoming events?
No? Don't think
Our
so.
next commission meeting, by the way, don't forget, August 9th.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Director Byrd, do you have any final remarks that you'd
I'll
like to
just
make?
say this, I believe we were trying to look this up, 28 items on the agenda, maybe a record, but kept my promise to you, 2 hours. We're gonna be, in fact, we've got some extra time, so we could revisit some famous speeches in history. I always kind of wanted us to know, I'm just kidding. You know. So, we got through it, and happy about that, and I do really, I wanna implore perhaps, If any of you would like to go on the tour, it was very gracious. Thank you, Commissioner Amos of the 137th Wing. Would love to have you. I think we've got 4, maybe 5, but would love to have you. So don't worry about it if you didn't tell us. We can accommodate you, no problem. So that's all I have.
Any comments from the commissioners like to make? I'd like to make one. I am so appreciative every time I come to these meetings, and it's been for a few years now. I know gentleman to my left's been a lot more meetings than I have. I'm always impressed with the diligence and the hard work of all the staff that you have, Director Byrd. You've assembled a unique group of individuals that work very hard and tirelessly and provide the state with outstanding support in aviation. So I would just like to say thank you to you, Director Byrd, and to your staff. Sometimes we overlook some of that.
I'd like to
Appreciate
offer one quick comment. License plates have started arriving. We have 4 in chapter 24, so appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Great.
We wish we could put yours up on a screen, Commissioner Amos, but it's beautiful.
Okay, and we're up to announcement of next meeting. As Sandra mentioned, it's August 9th right here, and we'll be doing a lot of work with aviation education grants, and I hope to invite everybody back. Is there any new business that the public would like to bring to our attention? I think everybody's ready for lunch. Meeting's adjourned.